It's Trial Tuesday, and today we are discussing workers' compensation claims. Attorney David Aylor joins us with more. Always good to see you.
Good to be back.
This is the thing we hear a lot about, workers' comp. If something happens to us on the job, where do we go from there?
Well, the most important thing is you've got to report it right then. We often see cases where this happens and people don't report it that day. They may go home, they may wait, a period of time, but they've got to have that record because to try to get a workers' comp claim going, they've got to make sure that they know that it actually did occur at work, and if there's injuries that's going to be claimed under the workers' compensation laws, it's got to make sure that it's documented that initial time.
Is that the biggest mistake that people make, that they don't document it?
Yeah, that's definitely, because what you're going to see then once it goes try to go forward through that process is they can easily say that, hey, we don't know that it happened that day at work, we don't know that it's actually that injury came from that incident, it could have come from something prior to that, or maybe something happened thereafter.
Sometimes it can be a major accident, obviously, but sometimes it can be something very simple. We don't have ice here, but slipping on an icy sidewalk. Even a fall at work, is that something that we should go to our HR department and say, just so you know, I fell? Yeah,
and you want to get that documentation because, a lot of times you may have something exactly like that. You may have a fall and you don't report it. And then it ends up being that you may have tore something, a ligament, a tendon, something like that. You don't report it. You try to come back a few days later and say, hey, you know what? The other day I slipped at work, I fell. And then you go backwards and workers' comp looks at it and they reject the claim simply because they're looking at it from the angle of we don't know that it actually happened here. And your employer may or may not even want to help you with that process. Another issue that comes up a lot of times is people are concerned that, am I going to get fired if I make that claim? And that's where the protection lies in. When you work with an attorney that's going to go through that process, they'll explain this, but you have to make sure that you know that you're not going to get fired simply because you're making that claim. You have those protections in place when you're working with a workers' comp situation. Essentially, that if you are injured at work, those protections in lie with the workers' comp laws that we have in place, that you actually are going to get paid because you've been injured at work and you're not going to be fired from it. It's illegal for that to happen.
Good to know. So speaking of being paid, if you do have a claim, what can you get for someone? Is it full salary? Is it reduced rate salary? How does it work?
It's really going to be on a scale. It's going to depend on what type of injury you had, how long you're going to be out for, and what type of, basically how long it's going to take to get you to recover to come back. And then you get into disability levels and things like that. But when you sit down with an attorney and they're going to look at to determine what exactly they're going to go in front of the disability board for as far as the workers' compensation board, and then looking at that, and then ultimately when you're going to get back to your employer and you're going to go back to what your full job was at the time prior to the actual incident that occurred that you were injured from.
Okay, so just to reiterate, something happens at work, report it, then call you, and then what's the timeline after that? Does it vary for all this to go through?
Yeah, it really is going to depend on the treatment that you're going to need. It's going to depend on how seriously you were injured. But anything that you're going to need, obviously you want to try to get back to full health. Sometimes that can happen depending on how serious the injury. Sometimes you may never get back to full health. But either way, you've got to start with that initial report and go from there.
All right, always a pleasure.
Thanks for having
Tuesday
me.
with attorney David Aylor, workers' comp. We've got much more. Low Country Live in just a moment. Stick with us.